Hello, and welcome back to the virtual classroom. I'm your host, Dr. Olmsted. As you can see, today's topic is a how-to video on, well, how to college note-taking. Now, let me give some basics, kind of background, contextual information about why we're doing this. You see, there's a lot of skills that you kind of just need to know and that are expected of you for any college course. Now, some are very specific to certain courses, certain fields, or even certain individual instructors. Others, most, are broader and much more transferable across the curriculum and hopefully in your future careers. For example, how to set up a basic essay. Now, while there are specific nuances such as type of citation, do we want APA, MLA, Chicago? Those may be specific to individual instructors or courses, but there is a general pattern of an outline of an essay, such as you should have an introduction, you should have a thesis, you should have topic sentences for paragraphs, you should have evidence, you should have explanation and analysis. Pretty basic, no matter which class you're in. And again, this is a skill, this writing of an essay is a skill that as college professors, we kind of assume you should know. Now, we expect you to improve, we will give you feedback, we will help you, but we assume when you enter our college classroom, you should know how to construct a basic essay. Now, I have whole separate videos on that. Another of those skills, though, that we all kind of assume you know, or that you should know, is note-taking. And yet it is a skill that is often ignored. I know that very few high school classes teach it. Very few college classes teach it. And we all just kind of assume that students just need to, well, figure it out. Now, please note, this is not some new Gen Z, Gen A issue. My brother and sister, who are 9 and 11 years older than I am, were both very smart in high school. But when they realized when they got to college, it was a whole nother level of intensity. My sister, who loved to read, she went and found herself a how to take college notes book. She read it, she learned how to take notes, and she earned high honors in college. My brother, on the other hand, who really doesn't like reading, he ignored this. He didn't struggle. He still earned honors in college. But this was in comparison to where he actually beat my sister in high school. So they kind of flip-flop because she learned, adapted on how to take good college notes by finding a good book on it. Now, I say this because I want you to understand this is not a new problem. They were in college 30 years ago. But I still see the same problem every semester. Most of my students will attempt to take notes, and they should, they need to. But what I also see is that most or many students often do it in a non-effective way. So I want to spend a few minutes here to try to kind of give you a short crash course on how to take effective notes. Now, please note, my way is not the only way. I'm not going to tell you my way is the best way because it may not be the most effective way for you personally. But this strategy that I've used has worked for me for more than 20 years. It's also used in tangent with how I set up my courses. Now, if you took Avid in high school and you were taught the Cornell notes taking method and you're comfortable with it, by all means, use it. Again, if you're not sure where to begin though, or if you're looking for a new way, you didn't like Cornell, let me show you my way. And again, this works great in part because this was the way I set up my lectures for this course and the content was directly the way I took notes as a college student. And so I created them in tandem. So whether you are in my face-to-face or an online course, I start all my lectures the same. The very first slide you see on the screen will always be a introduction overview outline slide. And let me show you what that looks like real quick. There you go right there. Now, the first thing you should see is my first slide provides some very pertinent information that you need to know for today's topic. The first thing is always going to be the title. Yes, that's important because it provides you an overview that you can use to understand what's going on, big picture. It can also be used for helpful for when you save files, especially if you're doing it on a computer taking notes, to help you find the file later more easily. So write that down. Next thing. Again, next thing I list is what's called key terms. Now, sometimes they're on the top, sometimes on the left. Depending on if you're in my History 1301, History 1302, History 2328, but they're always there. You see a list of key terms. Now, a few of these key terms are for spelling purposes because I don't want to spell out words during lecture. But all of them, 99.9% of them are there not for spelling purposes, but rather because these are important evidentiary examples that depict, they show, they validate. They are quintessential examples or case studies of the topic or argument I am making. This makes them important to the lecture of that day. They are also terms or examples that will show up or be used on section assignments that are used to assess you in this course. Now, if you are watching my pre-recorded videos, I always say it in the same way. Before my introduction to the video always says, hey, stop, take a moment, hit pause on this video, and pay particular attention to those key terms and be able to identify the who, what, where, when, why, how of each key term and be able to connect them to each other and their larger historical significance. I mean that. You should be able to identify the key terms in detail, like define them, fully define them. But you should also, very importantly, be able to connect them to each other and to whatever's going on in history at that time. This is what history is to me, is being able to make these connections, to understand these relationships between the key terms, between the key terms and other key terms, between the key terms and larger history concepts. This is what I'm going to ask you to do during your section assignments. So again, write those down. The third thing is a lecture outline written in a hierarchy that is designed to help guide you not only in the topic being discussed today, but also to help you organize your note-taking process. Now, I don't believe in fill-in-the-blank guided note-taking because it doesn't leave room for divergent discussions. I want to be able, especially in a face-to-face classroom, be able to take tangents to answer student questions. If I'm doing a fill-in-the-blank, follow-along note-taking or guided note-taking, I can't really do that. Now, I will always hit all the major points on my outline, but examples may vary from class to class, and that's fine. I will always hit the important quote-unquote meta topics. So what you need to do is write down that outline. Now, if you're taking it on a Word doc or a Google doc, you can simply just, like I have on the screen right now, you can simply, go over here, click on it, hit the Enter key, and be able to insert notes. That's what I find most effective. Now, if you are a person who takes handwritten notes, good on you. My handwriting sucks. It's almost non-legible. And so I prefer taking it on a computer. But studies have shown that handwritten notes actually are better for retention purposes. Now, so what you need to do if you're in my face-to-face class is show up to class 5 or 10 minutes early. I will have this on the screen, what you see on the left of the screen right now, lecture outline. You should write it down, whether on paper or on computer. If you're doing this online, simply hit pause and then jot it down and hit play again. Now, The other benefit to this note-taking style is that I provide you a basic structure for you in advance. If you look on Blackboard, I have a file under course content that's labeled brief lecture outlines. If you click on that folder, I have a Word doc of every one of my lecture outlines. They are like you see on the screen right now on the right. They are about a half to 1 page outline. Now, this is not a substitution for taking notes. Let me repeat that. This is not a substitution for taking notes. These are a half to 1 page outlines. The notes that I would be, say, giving you or that I use to develop my lectures are anywhere from 8 to 11 pages long. Now, I don't expect you to write down every word I say. Not that every word's not important, but rather I often repeat myself. I often say things different ways. I understand you're not a robot. You're not a stenographer. You're not going to write down every word I say. But you ultimately should have around 4 to 6 pages of notes depending on the lecture. It also depends on how large you write, if you're handwriting them, depends how much you indent, depends how much the indentation hierarchy you do. It depends on your margins and font size. So again, there's no hard and fast rule other than you need to take notes that will benefit you in the future. So I want to show you this in action. So this is going to be a little weird, a little bit freaky, since I'm going to see myself talking, hearing myself as I'm trying to also take notes while recording myself here on my computer. So it's going to be a little weird hearing, seeing myself at the same time, but we'll make it work. So let's get this started and show you. So it'll take a second to start because I'm going to show you one of my pre-recorded videos and how you can fill in the gaps. So let's hit play over here.
Hello and welcome back to the virtual classroom. I'm your host, Dr. Olmsted. Today's topic is the second part of our lecture on New World Settlement, the Chesapeake. Now, I do divide it into 2 separate lectures, but again, this is a continuation from our last lecture in regards to the first permanent settlement, the Chesapeake region, i.e. Jamestown. Now, we left off last time, we were kind of poking fun about the investors of the Virginia Company, because they imagined they would be able to basically have a very quick return on their investment. And if the original settlers who came to Jamestown, they would basically trapeze around Jamestown area, bend over, find gold. But unfortunately, they found none. There's no gold in Virginia. Now, we left off, of course, I gave you some horrific numbers. There's Jamestown right there. I gave you some horrific numbers. By 1622, the Virginia Company is bankrupt. Only 1,200 people out of 10,000 are remaining, and Jamestown is now a royal colony. And of course, I did poke fun of the Virginia Company for just throwing more people at it, throwing more columns at the problem. And while that is true, that is not the whole story. They were not that mono-dimensional. Before we get there, we need to talk about where I left off the very last end of last lecture, and that's with local Indians. You see, in the Chesapeake area, the local Indians were known as the Powhatan Confederacy. Now, the Powhatan Confederacy was 24,000 Indians living in the Chesapeake region. And they comprised, or they were from 30 different neighboring tribes. So in the Chesapeake region, there are 30 different tribes that comprise of 24,000 Native Americans. And despite the fact that they are all individual 30 tribes, they all fall under one leader, one man, one confederacy, and his name was Chief Powhatan. Now, you see the man picture there in the bottom left of your screen, that is Chief Powhatan. Now, the relationship between the Powhatan Confederacy and the British was kind of on again, off again. And if it was a Facebook status, it's complicated. But each side was always trying to one-up the other side in terms of power and political prowess. For example, at one point, the British decide to coronate him, Chief Powhatan, as a king of the Powhatan Confederacy, king of the Indians in the Chesapeake region. Now, why would they do this? By the way, that's the image you see in the bottom left. It's a painting of Powhatan's coronation. Well, here's the thing. Why would the English want to do this? Well, in order for him to be crowned king, Powhatan would need to bow. Think of, like, if you want a visualization, think about if you know your anything from world history or European history. Usually the king would go before the Pope and he would bow down and the Pope would crown him as king, which not only gives him legitimacy, but it technically always places the king or the royalty underneath the authority of the Pope. This was done specifically to maintain the church's and the Pope's power. Likewise, for Powhatan, if he were to kneel down so they could crown him and place a crown on his head and declare him king, the very nature that the British are the ones giving the authority, saying, hey, you're a king, that means they have authority over him, which theoretically then places the Powhatan Confederacy under the British rule. Now, I want to fish the situation. That's why they did it. But Powhatan's no fool. Again, he was a very skilled diplomat. He must be to, again, get 30 different tribes to agree to go under his rule. And they all seem to respect him for it. So at this coronation, you see him there. The British are coming on the left, and Powhatan's standing there. And basically, the British are waiting for Powhatan just to kneel. And of course, Powhatan knows that if he does so, he's essentially given them superiority status. And so Powhatan stands there. And stands there. And stands there. He won't budge. But at this point, things are getting a little bit awkward. And the British are like, what do we do now? He's not bowing. He's supposed to kneel. Isn't he supposed to be kneeling? Hey, supposed to kneel, right? Yeah, he's supposed to kneel. He's not kneeling. Finally, you see he has a staff he's holding in his hand. Finally, Powhatan's tired of standing there for so long. He kind of just shifts his weight a little bit to reposition his legs in his staff. And when he does that, the Brits say, oh, okay, there we go. Here you go. Here's your crown. Now, did he really bow down? No. Did the British think they'd won up to him? Yeah. Maybe a few people said, yeah, we did our job. A little deluded. But nonetheless, Powhatan would not concede the status or concede the point. That was the British side. Now, from the Powhatan side, the Indian side, the Confederacy side, they also try to one-up and take control of the British. For example, in 1607, very early on, after the Virginia Company sent the Jamestown colonists, they will capture one of their colonists and will proceed to, quote-unquote, torture him over the course of many days, almost a week. Now, eventually, they will place this man in the center of a large room, wherein many Native American men will presumably rush at him with weapons in their hand, brandishing weapons, presumably to kill him. If not for the fact that Powhatan's daughter, at the last moment, throws herself on top of the man, begging for his life. I'm sure you know the story. Is a story, of course, of John Smith being captured, forget from the movie, Mel Gibson's voice, and of course, Powhatan's daughter, you may have heard of her, Pocahontas. Now, I make a lot of Disney references early on because I do enjoy a good Disney movie. This, however, while there's some historical accuracy and good peaceful moments, it's not exactly accurate. Now, when I say not exactly accurate, well, one part that is true, though, is Pocahontas is the daughter of Chief Powhatan. Yes, John Smith was captured. Unfortunately, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed John Smith and this very beautiful-looking Pocahontas was not quite this spitting image of their real-life counterparts. In fact, here's a more accurate depiction of what they actually looked like. Oh, I forget to mention that John Smith was about 30 years old in 1607. Pocahontas was 12. Yeah, Disney forgot to mention that part. Now, I will post a link about a more elaborate version of the story of Pocahontas, but here's a short version of it. Did Pocahontas really save John Smith? Yes. Technically true, but not in actuality in all practical purposes. This was a charade. You see, in Indian culture, in the Powhatan Confederacy culture, it was common to capture a enemy warrior. Again, pseudo torture them over the course of a week. Again, this is not brutal beating, this is pseudo torture. And then to have someone throw their life upon him to beg for his life as these Indians are rushing at them. This is part of a initiation, maybe a hazing for a sorority or fraternity, as a way to induct the other tribe into the Powhatan Confederacy. And so Pocahontas, as the chief's beloved daughter, and many believed that she would be the next leader of the Powhatan Confederacy once her father died. Again, very unusual for a woman in most Indian societies, but again, Indian society, we learned last time, was a little more egalitarian. And so, yes, she did do this. She was playing a role. And in fact, at the end of this is when Chief Powhatan actually calls John Smith son. Pocahontas calls him brother. Because in the mind of the Powhatans, basically these white people, these Englishmen.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Now, again, we could go on to the entire lecture this way, and that would be fine. However, I believe that would be kind of an exercise in tedium. So I'm going to stop it right there, but you can see what I'm doing, and I hope you could follow along. This is how I took notes as an undergraduate when I was in this very class at community college in Flint, Michigan. Back then I did used to take more handwritten notes back then, but even when I went to computer, it was the same way. When I went to graduate school, I took notes the same way. Using this hierarchical way of taking notes allowed me to organize my thoughts. It allowed me to kind of follow along in the story. By indenting, I'm able to say, well, this belonged with this topic. And by doing this, I could go back and reread my notes. And guys, this is in a very effective way. I was able to study for my examinations for graduate school and recount 25-page essays from memory by making a hierarchy of all my outline of my essay in my head, and then be able to recount it and reproduce it from memory. This is a very effective way. Again, if you have a different way that you're comfortable with, use it. If you have more questions about it, reach out to me. But these outlines are there for you on Blackboard. If you're face-to-face, you have me face-to-face lecture. You absolutely will have me repeat myself. You can raise your hand. I will repeat myself that way. If you also, whether you're face-to-face or online, all my pre-recorded lectures like the one you saw here are on Blackboard. You need to watch them. You can watch them again. You can pause. You can fast forward. You can rewind. You can slow my voice down. But the important thing is that you take good notes, because they will be beneficial for you on the section assignments. They'll be beneficial for you to understanding the scope and breadth of this class in history. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, until next time, take care and bye-bye.